Sterling, thank you for asking me to have a word with you. It's a great honor.
Thanks for coming.
Whereas this gentleman will be completely known to everyone, it's a bit the opposite with myself. I am a curator and head of acquisitions in the Louisiana Museum. You may know that museum in Copenhagen. I was trying to picture how these works end up here, and I would say they're all basically done on the floor.
Yeah.
And there's a small section upstairs of very interesting and very small works. And I think for someone coming from the painting, who maybe did not intend to be a painter, but you were still somehow affiliated with paint, we could put it that way, of the 1990s. And you look at these small works and you see, and it's not my job to evaluate your work here inside this context, but I would say that they are very subtle, and they bear all the marks of someone who's very precise. And are they also on the floor, these very small ones?
They're not on the floor, but they're horizontal. They're on a little table.
But they're still horizontal.
It's 30 inches off the floor, but they're horizontal. And then at some point in time, they have to move. These two, at some point in time, they have to move off the floor, and then we kind of prop them up on a wall, and I work on them that way.
Okay, because it's a long tradition in America of
floor painting, yeah.
Working on the floor,
and
throwing paint.
Yeah, it's true. Things. Yeah. If we're specifically talking about these paintings, working on the floor is a way to kind of like think about topography, think about surveillance, things that are very much key in theory or key in thought, but have this association with like a formal gesture. So I really like that. I like working on this notion that it's a kind of excavation, it's a site, it's a topography. This happens in the ceramics. This happens in the textile works.
It's a site.
Bronze, it's a site.
Yeah.
The site then shifts up, and if we're specifically looking at these, then some of the ideas that come out from it is looking at the lineage of, say, Barnett Newman Zips, thinking about the way not only your sight, but your mind is divided into two places, and what is this kind of offset Rorschach? They start to generate more kind of graphic elements like flags and blankets. They have this kind of base at the bottom, which is essentially a cardboard substructure. So they oscillate between being topographies and being kind of high rises or vertical paintings.
The very nice Drifter works on paper show in the other section or the other gallery, and we should also bear in mind that there is also a sculpture exhibition in the near to see also. I was thinking that there seems to be a whole sort of inventory of things coming on. We could start out with windows, stoves, tables, blankets, clothing. As you move along into Sterling's studio, you will pass a sort of a textile section, and you drift into ceramics and onwards. Basins, everything in a way to do with living and a sort of kind of maybe simple living. And I was thinking that, as I know that you're also interested in shaker stoves and things like this, so you could look at this vocabulary or this inventory as a sort of domesticity.
Yeah.
So if you look out, if for a moment we forget about the bar or the cross or whatever, the window structure. If we look around this exhibition, we would see something that is close to, or could be close to, the heroic 1950s of American painting. It could be landscape, and it could be almost attentive to a sort of detail in an almost still life way. And I wonder if it's not probably true, all of it. But my question would then be, how does it feel when you, because that's what happens, at the end you add this structure.
In terms of the window format and in terms of thinking about it in relation to the window, I started to just, in my mind, think about this abstraction of how you look through a window. And I, years ago, had come up with this kind of like weird press release for a show that I was doing. It was based on time. And I kind of equated it to this prison analogy. Your time's totally different before you go into prison.
Yeah.
And your time's totally different when you're coming out of prison.
Yeah.
So I started to think about these windows as these kind of ways of viewing either through something or into something that would allude to more time, more freedom, less time. And the design aspect of that, having something that's very anthropomorphic, having something that's very gestural, hard cut against this defined, straight, geometric cardboard line, is like the opposition of one another. And I kind of feel like that, to me, formally and theoretically, always has to happen. So I don't, maybe it's a little comfortable when the bars go on, but I think it also, it creates this kind of tension between these things, not only materially, but also, you know, again, contextually.
And I think it's very interesting to nurture the idea of kind of sterling ruby, AC and BC. I mean, this whole idea of traveling in time, that it's not just the now and it's not some comfortable historic past. You pendulate uncomfortably to the viewer, I would say, if beautifully, between many zones or stratas in time. And I was looking up a word, because of course it's not my native language. I was looking for the word diluvial, of some catastrophes, the flood that had sort of come upon man. And it was interesting to read in the Wikipedia that up to Enlightenment, up until the mid-18th century, I mean, fossilists and geologists and thinkers, they were kind of dating a time, sort of prescribing a time that would be antediluvial and diluvial and post-diluvial. And in some funny way, when I look at your work, there is that, I mean, effortless seems as if it's an easy thing. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that I drift into the deep past and very much onto the realities of the now.
I had already been thinking about these things, like what happens when things are buried and dug up, reassessed, buried again, dug up, reassessed, buried again, dug up, reassessed. Like, how does the decomposition, or, you know, if we're talking like analytically, how does the deconstruction of those things create this broader expanse of confusion? And I always thought, thinking about that and also thinking about, you know, what other artists do, that the burden of art historical time has given most artists my age this set of baggage. I've always been kind of interested in this very early kind of modernist kind of trajectory of collage. You know, the collage from like Schwitters or Picasso, these were things, you know, that had all of these different diverse elements, whether it was a graphic quality, whether it was, you know, a label that had a recognizable company on it, whether or not it was a piece of soiled linen, and that when you fuse these things together, you got these kind of hybrids, these kind of illicit hybrids. And I always thought that was key to everything that I did, that there was a lineage to collage that meant that you try and push things together that weren't necessarily meant to go together. And sometimes that's extremely formal. Sometimes it's when you have a very feathery, soft gesture, you want to put it up against something that has a definitively hard line.